everyone. I'm Anirudh from Gamma Technologies. There are some big movers or prime movers in the automotive industry right here today in our room. And one question with electrification is the cost of vehicle ownership, right? The customer's asked to put up an initial cost, but the cost of ownership needs to be low. So one question to answer that is, how do you make the battery cheaper? Or if it's expensive, how do you decide your warranty? Because your battery's got to last at least 7 or 8 years, or the customer's really getting a bad buy there. So that's really the motivation of what we're trying to do here. So when you talk of predicting battery life or battery warranty or whatever, you've got to look at the entire electric vehicle as a system. You cannot look at the electronics separately. You cannot look at the mechanics separately. You cannot look at the thermal management system separately and predict warranty. You've got to look at the entire system together, and that's really the motivation of this paper. So this is the sort of the project outline. So what we're doing is we're building a model with 3 components integrated. So you've got the electronics, so the powertrain with the vehicle. You've got the thermal management system of the vehicle with the cabin, the HVAC, or the heat recovery system, all of that modeled in the model. And you've also got the you've got the electrochemical battery model. So unless you capture the physics or the chemistry of the battery, you cannot look at battery aging or whether it's cycle or calendar aging. So what we're doing is we're taking this model, which contains all of these components, and we're going to run it over a drive cycle, right? So we're running it over a detailed drive cycle. Once we run it over a drive cycle, we're going to charge the battery, right? So just like the real world, your vehicle runs a drive cycle, you put it up to charge. You've got different possible charging strategies, and after that, your vehicle rests for a while. And during this entire process, you've got to look at the battery life. So that's the model we built in GD Suite. So you've got the electronics over there in yellow. You've got the mechanics of the vehicle in blue there. You've got the controllers up on the top. And then you've got the thermal management system. So you've got your motor cooling circuit, your battery cooling circuit connected to the refrigerant circuit, and that connected to your cabin airflow circuit. So like I said, so the first thing we do is we take the vehicle, along with all of this, run it over a drive cycle. That's the J1634 cycle, which is a pretty aggressive cycle. Then we're putting it on a fast charge routine. So we've got multiple charging strategies we're looking at. And once the vehicle charges, we put it to rest. So these are some results from that. So you got your J1634 cycle there. That's your speed versus time profile. And once the vehicle runs that, you're also looking at the degradation in the state of charge of your battery. Right? So your battery charge drops from 100% to 10%, and your vehicle speed is running the drive cycle. Okay. Now when it comes to fast charging, what we're doing is the battery is is being charged at some rate of 100 kilowatts. You've got a 10% SOC at the start, and you're trying to get to 100% state of charge. And what we're doing here while charging is we're looking at multiple charging strategies and multiple thermal strategies to make sure you're not damaging your battery. So while you're charging, like I said, for the battery, you would have to model the chemistry, because just modeling your typical electrical equivalent circuit is not enough here. So what we've done is we're modeling the pseudo-Newman 2D equations to capture the physics or the electrochemistry of the battery here. And we're trying to look at some aging mechanisms like the SEI layer anode growth. We're looking at graphite cracking and also some lithium plating towards the end of the battery's life. So getting to some results, from this model, we've got the, like I said, so the first case we're looking at is a vehicle with active cooling. So the earlier plot we saw is the battery SOC in blue there, dropping from 100 to 10%. And you've got the battery temperature increases, right? So while your vehicle is running a drive cycle, your battery temperature is also increasing. So that's gone up from 300 to 306 Kelvin. Now what we're doing after the vehicle runs this drive cycle, we are going to look at multiple charging strategies. So this is something that's pretty pertinent to the charging industry today. So one, they would like to do fast charging, so we try to supply a high DC voltage. But then another suggested method today is instead of just supplying a high current, why not ramp up to that current from 0 and then supply that constant current rate? So that's something we explored here. So we've got the first case we tried is a constant current of 250 amps, which is pretty high for this battery. Then we've got 250 amps with active cooling. And then we ramp up to 250 amps and then supply 250 amps with active cooling. So what you see in red there is the temperature change with absolutely no cooling. So your battery started at 300 Kelvin and it went out to almost 320 Kelvin, which is a huge increase in temperature over one drive cycle, and that's going to damage your battery badly. Then what we do is the blue curve there. So that's your standard cooling, but with no current ramp. So you see your battery temperature looks a little better during charging, but it is still increasing. The green there is the perfect example of what is ideal. So your battery temperature is pretty constant throughout the charge cycle. And what's interesting is that ramping up your current from 5 to 250 amps is only increasing your charging time by 3 minutes, right? So if your car or your motorcycle had to charge for 30 minutes or 1 hour, you just add an extra 3 minutes to that 60 minutes, and you get an extra battery life of another 100 cycles. So the battery aging part, which is the physics or the chemistry of the lithium-ion battery, that was modeled in ETAuto Lion. Right, so again, we are going through the process over here, right? So we're running a J1634 drive cycle, we're looking at 3 charge strategies, and we're looking at different thermal cooling strategies. And then there's the rest period between each cycle. So what we see is, without any active cooling, this battery ran for only about 90 cycles, right? So with some active cooling, it ran 250 cycles, and for active cooling with the current ramp, it ran about 450 cycles. So just, even if you have active cooling, with just the current ramp, with just a better charging strategy, we pretty much doubled our battery life there, right? And for a difference with active cooling with the current ramp versus no cooling at all, you get almost a 500% increase in battery life. So of course, since you're actively cooling the battery, you've got an extra compressor, you have a chiller circuit, so that's going to cause some decrease in range in your battery. So what we're looking at first here is an aged versus an unaged battery. So if you have active cooling, your battery is going to age less. For an unaged battery, you've got a range of 320 kilometers. After your capacity fades with some aging, your range is 270 kilometers. That's almost a 50-kilometer drop in range because of bad charging practices or bad thermal management practices. Okay, so the next is the thermal behavior. So let's say you're running a vehicle in Kashmir versus in the Himalayas versus bringing it to Jaipur. So that's going from, say, 20 degrees Celsius to a 40 degrees Celsius ambient. And your battery is going to be very different. Your vehicle is going to perform differently. The aging is going to be different. So, and this is something you have to study, right? So when you decide your warranty, you cannot decide it for one geographical region in your country. You've got to decide it for the entire country. So what we did is we took this vehicle, we ran it in a 40 degrees Celsius ambient environment. So the vehicle was soaked in conditions similar to Jaipur, that's 40 degrees, on the lower side sometimes. And once it was soaked, what we saw is this temperature versus time plot. So what you see in red is the battery temperature increasing when it started at 27. But once you take it up to 40, you see the curve in blue, where your battery temperature is dropping due to active cooling, but it's still hard to maintain it at 34 degrees there. So one interesting point to note, so one interesting thing to see is your battery SOC. In hot conditions, your battery degrades a lot quicker than in cold conditions. So again, without any thermal management, it's going to be worse. And of course, one compromise here is that your range is going to be a little lower, in this case, by about 10 kilometers. That's because of extra compressor usage for thermal management. Yeah, so in summary, if you're going to look at a vehicle model, or if you're going to look at your battery aging, or you're going to decide the warranty of your battery, you've got to model the entire system together. You cannot model each part in silos and come up with a figure. I think that's a big takeaway here. Thank you.